Truly, there are a lot of no-go zones when it comes to topics of discussion. But tonight I'm going to dive into just one, and that forbidden topic is this. In Canada, you're no longer free to say immigration can have negative consequences. According to the Liberals, the NDP, and even Andrew Scheer's Conservatives, the only permissible comment that we can make about immigration has to be glowing praise. And there are things to praise. We know, you and I, we know newcomers to Canada who have fully embraced our country's values, and they are examples of industriousness and ethics and compassion, and they are amazing Canadians. But there's still a lot wrong with our immigration system. And in this climate of forced censorship, it's getting worse. And if you dare to question elements of our current system, if you dare to question the illegal crossings, the increasing numbers, or how immigrants are vetted, and our country's elites will call you racist or bigoted. It doesn't matter that you don't hold any malice and that their label is a slanderous lie. They don't care about the facts. In my case, they won't care that I always will treat every person equally. They won't care that I've always taught my children that your sex doesn't matter, your skin color doesn't matter, your ethnicity doesn't matter a bit, because for those people who would censor us, your intent doesn't matter. What's in your heart doesn't matter, because for them, if you question anything about the immigration system, these politicians will call you a racist or some other epithet. Okay, hold on. To be fair, Andrew Scheer probably would not call you a racist. Andrew Scheer, the Conservative Party leader, would probably just tell you what he tells his other Conservative Party MPs. He would say, shh, keep your mouth shut. As his record shows, Scheer hates to take public stands on most issues. Of course, in private, Scheer's different. When no one's looking, if it will get him votes or public funds, Scheer is willing to pander to anybody. And while Andrew Scheer wants to avoid issues and keep things hush-hush, we've got other federal leaders doing their name-calling in public anytime you bring up immigration. The examples are many. The most recent came just last week from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. It was during a candidates meeting, again in Burnaby South in BC. He was hoping to shut the debate down. So Singh said that he found it disgusting that the People's Party candidate, Laura Lynn Thompson, raised concerns about safety and security when discussing refugees. Now, her comments didn't come just out of the blue. They related to the case of a Syrian refugee who a couple of months ago murdered a local BC girl. Laura Lynn was reflecting on that issue, and she wondered if better vetting measures couldn't be in place when it comes to refugees. Of course, most people would have been disgusted by the murder. Jagmeet Singh was disgusted that Laura Lynn was willing to speak about it and try and look for solutions. But if you want the prime example of censorship on immigration issues, go to the Prime Minister. In August, when Justin Trudeau was at an event in Quebec, a woman demanded to know when Quebec would be reimbursed for the cost of illegal immigrants who've entered through unguarded portions of the border. We don't need to speculate on the character of that woman. That's irrelevant, because we can see from the facts alone that that's a legitimate question. By way of background, let's recall that in January 2017, Justin Trudeau made his famously idiotic and irresponsible Twitter post. In that social media message, he said that Canada would welcome every immigrant, and people around the world took him at his word. Illegal immigration to Canada has now skyrocketed to its highest levels ever. Before Justin made his tweet, there were about 400 cases of illegal border crossings yearly. Now listen to the actual numbers on the crisis that Justin Trudeau has created. Between 2017 and 2018, almost 35,000 illegal immigrants entered our country, and it's led to a processing backlog of almost 65,000. And that backlog means that migrants who tried to follow the rules, who respected our laws, are now having their immigration hearings delayed. And each illegal border crosser costs Canadian taxpayers $14,000 in federal funds. In terms of federal costs alone, Canadians have now spent more than $1.3 billion of public funds on people who gamed the system to enter our country. And that billion doesn't include costs to the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, who on your dime are forced to provide room and board. So when a Canadian woman asks the Prime Minister, when are you going to fix the mess that you made? You'd think he would grace her with an answer. But no, Justin Trudeau went on the attack, and here's his quote: "Madam, this intolerance toward immigrants has no place in Canada, and you have no place in Canada." He then proceeded to call her a racist, and she was removed by security guards. The topic of my speech is things you're not supposed to say. If you're being taken away by security guards, it's a fairly clear sign that discussions about immigration are now off limits. But they can't be off limits. Not if we care about the economic and social well-being of our country. So I'm having a conversation about immigration tonight with you. I'm talking about the things that I'm not supposed to talk about, and I can do that with complete alignment with the policies of the People's Party of Canada. Of all the federal parties, the immigration policy of the People's Party is the only one that's willing to say our economic needs need to be balanced against our need for security and our need to be a unified population that shares the same core values. And to ensure the economic and the security and unity needs, to ensure that they are met, we've got a clear plan. To help the economy, we'll make changes so that businesses unable to find Canadian workers with specialized skills, they can more easily hire immigrants who can supply the manpower they need. To ensure security, the PPC will increase resources for CSIS and the RCMP and Canadian immigration to do background checks on all classes of immigrants. And if deemed necessary, we'll also have funding for more face-to-face interviews. We're also going to stop reliance on the United Nations for our refugee selection. Instead, the PPC is going to get groups of Canadians already working in foreign areas to seek out those who would most successfully integrate into Canada. Believe it or not, looking for refugees who could most successfully integrate into Canada, or asking immigrants, tell us more about yourself, that's now deemed bigoted by those on the political left. And they're slamming the PPC for our policies. Because in their eyes, it's a sign of intolerance to other cultures to suggest that some traits and attitudes might fit better with life and society in Canada. Of course, there's no logic to their thinking, and it defies statistical reality. We know for certain that some values held by some groups are at odds with our own. I'll give you a quick example. One of the leading research institutes is the Pew Research Center. They're based out of Washington, D.C. In 2017, Pew published the results of the largest survey ever on the personal values of people living outside the West. So from that survey, we know that a third or more of the population of Afghanistan, Egypt, and Palestinian territory say suicide attacks in defense of Islam are justified. In Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Egypt, between 80 and 90% say women should not have the same rights as men. In those same countries, the majority say Sharia, religious law, should be the law of the land. And a majority also say that they prefer an authoritarian style of government to a democracy. Now, I'm not trying to pick on those particular countries. With the Pew survey data, I could have picked any number of countries that would show troubling attitudes. And make no mistake, I believe that there are people in every country who are good people, who don't hold troubling views, and they would make fine Canadians. But only a fool would choose to ignore what the statistics can tell us and can teach us. We've got to stop this willful blindness. We've got to stop sticking our head in the politically correct sand. Facts cannot be off limits. When facts are allowed, we create better procedures to make our country more secure. Let's talk for a minute about unity and social harmony. For unity and social harmony, the PPC plan on immigration is simple and effective. We want to slow immigration down. And to be honest, it's that part of the PPC policies that makes the other parties the most crazy. It's what gets the name calling going. And here's the irony. It makes them yell the loudest because they know it's where we have our strongest evidence. They would prefer if they could just get us to shut up, because when more Canadians hear the facts, the more they embrace the policies of the People's Party. If you're like most Canadians, you don't even know what our yearly immigration rate is. But don't feel badly. Your ignorance is actually government-sponsored. In April 2018, the Canadian press published leaked government memos. In them, bureaucrats advised the Liberals to suppress the facts around immigration numbers. Why? Because focus groups showed that when the population learns the real numbers, support for immigration drops. So if you're like most Canadians, you'd be shocked to hear that Canada's immigration rate is the highest of all G7 nations. Let's take a moment to do a thought experiment. Think about any country in the West, a country that you've read about in the news and that you've heard about civil unrest tied to immigration. If you're having trouble, I'll help you out. Germany might come to mind. The recent riots in France might come to mind. Brexit and the crumbling social unity in Britain might come to mind. In each of those countries, mass immigration is a key part of a mix that's led to massive civil unrest. But most Canadians have no idea that in each of those countries, the immigration rates are significantly lower than what we have in Canada. The most up-to-date statistics on country immigration rates are compiled by the CIA in the United States. And those stats show that Canada's annual immigration rate is more than double the immigration rate of Britain. It is 4 times that of Germany and is 6 times that of France. Based on the outcomes we're currently witnessing in these other countries, is it not fair to question whether Canada's massively higher immigration rates need retooling? Isn't it better to take the lessons from other nations and be proactive now rather than wait for the problems that are already occurring elsewhere? Being proactive is exactly what the People's Party calls for. And the reductions we're proposing are fair and moderate. Here are the specifics. We want to change the 350,000 immigrants per year that the Liberals put in place and reduce that down to 250,000 per year. By the way, if that 250,000 still sounds high, surveys show that most Canadians think our immigration rate is about 150,000 per year. What's important to know is that the best social scientific evidence proves that the PPC plan is exactly what's needed for the good of our country and for the good of immigrants. As a researcher myself, I love to talk about what the studies show, but I know that everybody is not as enamored with that kind of nerdy stuff. So I'm not going to talk about what all the studies show. Instead, I'm just going to talk about one researcher. His name is Eric Kaufman. He's at the University of London, and he's currently one of the world's experts on the effects of immigration. In fact, he's just recently become quite popular. He was featured in the Globe and Mail last week. He also had a primetime interview on TVO's The Agenda. His book is currently among the top 10 non-fiction books selling in the UK. In a nutshell, here's what his vast amount of empirical evidence shows. It shows that lower levels of immigration are best for preventing civil unrest and ensuring stability of society. When immigration levels are kept lower, longtime citizens are able to adjust to demographic change and they become more welcoming. And more importantly, low immigration levels allow newcomers the time they need to integrate into their new culture and dispense to lower population areas. Now, on the other hand, Dr. Kaufman finds that high levels of immigration, and Canada has way above most, those high levels are directly correlated to increases in social tension, and when left unchecked, as we've seen in other countries, radicalization and hostility. To be low immigration is actually to be pro-immigrant, because lower immigration benefits immigrants to our country. For their long-term well-being and acceptance, lower is better. I want harmony in our Canadian society, and I want newcomers to thrive and to feel welcome. So I'm mindful of what numbers we need to accomplish that goal. Thank you.